I know we're okay. We are now there. So welcome. It's September 29th, 2025 for Kirkland Township Board meeting. We have all three members of the board, Rebecca Leakby, Ren Brown, and David Bloom. I am the trustee, Jared Adler. And apart from anybody that might be watching online, we have no members of the public here in person. So just three brief things that we need to do tonight. We'll start with the two simple ones that we can knock out quickly. First is just the board minutes from the last meeting. I'll read through those briefly. The board meeting was held at the Kirkland Township office on Tuesday, February 11th, 2025. Attendees were board members Ren Brown, David Bloom, and Rebecca Leakby, trustee Jared Adler. No member of the public in attendance. Prior board meeting minutes of January 9th, 2025 reviewed and approved. Discussed annual contracts for fire fund and cumulative fire fund. Trustee confirmed maximum amount permissible to increase for each for conversations with Department of Local Government Finance and State Board of Accounts related to budget and appropriations. Board approves fire and cumulative fire contracts to maximum as follows. Preble Volunteer Fire Department, $17,000. Preble Cumulative Fire, $15,545. Monroe Rescue Unit for $1,000. Monroe Volunteer Fire Department for fire, $4,885. And Monroe Cumulative Fire Contract for $9,000. Continued discussion from the prior meeting regarding Zion Cemetery, including an increase in the contract for the caretaker. Trustee confirmed the contract does not require public bid process per SBOA, and we may proceed. Board approves Brady Ripple as new Zion Cemetery caretaker and provisionally approves increase to $1,000, subject to Ripple's confirmation as to the amount. Motion to adjourn by David Bloom, seconded by Rebecca. Approved. Those are the meeting minutes. Unless there are any questions with respect to those, I have a motion to approve.
So moved.
So moved by Dave and seconded.
No, you.
We all go. Very good. So the minutes, Dave moves to approve, seconded by Ren, and then I can see with the hands, just show hands, all in favor. Very good. Unanimously approved. So related to that, as that kind of refreshes our memory with where we are. Zion Cemetery, Brady Ripple did agree to take on the contract, as we discussed. This is an opportunity for his teenage sons to jump in and do that. And they also agreed to the amount. So I have, if we can circulate around the table, only because we haven't done that previously, are the two copies, one for each of us, of the 2025 Zion Cemetery maintenance. I've already signed, Brady has already signed, and I know there was a concern expressed previously about trimming with respect to the cemetery. I confirmed that young man's trimmer broke and he was working on that and getting it fixed. So that was a known thing and not a big thing. So if there are any concerns with the cemetery, want to know about it, but at least in the last week.
Well, I'll just respectfully go around the rules. So you don't know, like that's, like it's been mowed.
And this is for Zion. Because we have Zion southwest of us right now on 500 West, and Shady Cemetery is on 500. I know I went there after you sent me a message the other day, and I saw around a couple of stones, the wildflowers that were planted there were starting to die off. So it was trimmed with respect to grass. It wasn't trimmed with respect to the dying wildflowers around a couple of stones. So at least that was when I looked at it, what was growing around a couple of stones were the wildflowers that had been planted there. But was it something you noticed, or was it something that someone else said?
Noticed. But it still has to be in full respect of the tombstones as well.
I
mean,
I absolutely appreciate that. So with respect to Zion, I know that they were working on repairing the trimmer, so as I viewed it in the last week to trim around some of the stones, that was something known that they were going to address. And I'll reach out to the caretaker for Shady to point out that in addition to making sure you're doing above trimming, once the wildflowers are dying and start to look bad around the stones, let's get those.
Well, I don't know,
It's tough, but yes, so thank you for those. So the last thing and the main purpose for this meeting tonight is the capital improvement plan. That is something new for us for a township of our size. Allow me to take a moment just to kind of 30,000 foot level what it is, where it came from. So as you mentioned a while ago, is the state coming to take our money? Short answer to that is yes, to the tune of 30%. The state will be taking from every township. So of course, the rules are one size fits all, 30% of unrestricted funds. What does that mean? First off, fire contracts, cumulative fire, township assistance, those things that are already specified where we have money going for this certain things are considered restricted funds, not unrestricted funds. So unrestricted funds generally means for us, our rainy day fund and our general township fund, which has money in it that is not specifically set aside for any particular thing. Why does the state do this? One of the my conversations with some people pointed out there are a few townships around the state who have been taking out the maximum that they can levy every single time. So they've been maximum taxing their residents for years, but they haven't been spending. And they've been building up a significant war chest in tune of millions of dollars for some townships. I know one nearby that was over $1 million. The state, generally speaking, doesn't want that money just sitting there not being used for citizens and for residents and public. So they are going to take, not next year, but the year after that, they're using this year and then next year's numbers to figure out what 30% is. But the state, every township is responsible for sending 30% of their unrestricted funds to the state. And the money is to be then used for road work, road maintenance, but within the township. So essentially, in a way of thinking about it, they're going to take 30% of the unrestricted funds from the township and automatically shift it to those entities in the state that are responsible for roads, and that money is supposed to go for the township roads. So I'll use one example from another township who saw their meeting and how they were handling it. They were well over $1 million in unrestricted funds. They made the decision that they wanted to spend that money as best they could prior to this happening. Not that they were just wanting to spend it right away, but they thought to themselves, roads are expensive. And their 30% would have been a little north of $300,000, which my understanding from talking to them is that's good enough to chip and seal one road for 1 mile, or excuse me, pave a road for 1 mile, or chip and seal roughly 3 miles of road. But they made the decision that we would rather, instead of going to 1 or 2 roads in the township, try to put the money towards as many people as possible. So they did more than 300,000 to local parks. They put money into a number of different things so that they could reduce the size of their unrestricted funds by appropriating that money so that it could be used, using the park as an example. Everybody in the township can use that park. So instead of 1 road getting fixed, everybody could benefit. We are different from some of those townships. First off, we have not been doing the maximum levy. We have always kept a tax at what we thought was an appropriate level. And we have not raised taxes in years. We've been asked if we want to do a gradient increase, which we haven't done, and if we want to do the maximum increase. And we've been spending essentially the same that we've brought in, or maybe slightly less, but there hasn't been a reason for us to increase taxes with our levy because we've had sufficient money in the bank and maintain that. So we didn't have, like some of these other townships, this huge nest egg that they're trying to go after that's not being used. The other thing where we don't fit in some of those are, we don't have a whole lot of capital. If you talk about capital improvements, we're meeting in my home, right? We don't have a physical office building like some townships do. We don't have equipment, we don't have vehicles, we don't have office equipment. A lot of the different things that there are other larger townships that have, we don't have. So the idea for Kirkland Township for a capital improvement plan, well, what capital are we going to improve? Could be going towards the acquisition of land, but I don't think the township needs to be buying any land in the township and setting up a building. What we've been doing, in short, has been going well. What we do have and care for are the two cemeteries we were talking about before, Shady and Zion. So I got a couple handouts for you that you can look at there. There's one for the rainy day fund. You can see $4,078. That's an anticipated cash balance at the end of 2026. And then at the bottom, they calculate what 30% of that is. This is from a capital improvement plan worksheet that the state has provided for us to go through with respect to these things, so that they can plan. They're not asking us to pay 30% now. They're trying to get an idea of what that's going to be when the time comes. And if we're using money for an intended purpose for capital improvement, that would then reduce the unrestricted amount, the total amount. It's going to be 30% no matter what it is, but reduce it. So on the second sheet, you can see this is from the budget workshop being done when they calculate some of that. You can see where it says budget form B4B there. But they predict an estimate, and this is for our general fund, not our fire fund, not our cumulative fire fund, not our township assistance fund. But our general fund having $115,313. And you can see there's a figure 50,000 and then an adjusted estimated of just north of 65,000 with the calculated 30% of just shy of 20,000. The next page of your handout explains where those figures come from. So the 115 and then the 50,000 reducing from that. You can see three entries that I put into for 2026, 2027, and 2028. We're obligated to do this for the next 3 years. And you can see what I've put there. The first one for each year, there's cemetery, monument, headstone, repair, resetting, cleaning, maintenance, etc. And I put 20,000 as a figure there because we know prices go up, and the idea being this is an estimate. As you can see, it says there estimated project expense. So I've been advised, try to make it a fair estimate, but also err on the side of caution a little bit so that you have that. There's also, hey buddy, need you to be quiet, okay, please? Thank you. There's also sign repair, cleaning, and maintenance as a line item there for anything that might happen to a sign. And landscaping is a third item for new bushes, trees, or flowers. We've had over the last couple of years, a couple branches come down from a couple of trees. Some of the trees are nice, they're older. We can talk about what we want to do to improve the cemeteries. I've gone over in the last week, and there are a couple monuments, a couple stones that are starting to lean over, one or two where the top of the stone's fallen off the base. We don't have a huge problem with a lot of stones needing some cleaning up, but there's a couple that could use that. And this process with the capital improvement plan kind of gives us an opportunity to say, hey, before the state falls 30% back, we can use some of these funds to do some of that. So this is an estimate the fact that we put these line items in our capital improvement plan does not mean we are obligated to do that. It's just laying out as an estimate of some things we envision potentially doing. Certainly, as I put these figures on here, just as something for us to start with and talk about, I don't envision over the next 3 years spending $75,000 on our 2 cemeteries. But to estimate with each of them to leave us some room with respect to having that, and the state should be leaving money alone, so to speak, from our 30% that we will be sending to them, so that we have that money available for these types of things. These were ideas for potential capital improvement things that we could do over the next 3 years. And obviously they're all connected to the cemeteries, because apart from cemeteries, what do we have that we could put money towards fixing anything up that the township's responsible? That's the 2 cemeteries.
People there to help along.
Township assistance,
Yeah.
good question. So township assistance is separate. So like the fire funds, township assistance is a restricted fund, meaning they're not going to touch them. We have not done any levy towards township assistance in years. In the ballpark, we're around 70, we're somewhere 75 to $80,000, I think, in that fund. So we've had a nice nest egg there where we haven't done a levy for it in a while. However, in the last year, for the first time in a long time, there have been a couple of electric bills and a couple of propane bills around the winter months to make sure people stayed in heat. So we've spent a couple of thousand towards the end of 2024, and then this year, kind of this past winter. I do not know if circumstances have changed such that we anticipate that I know for many years prior, our township didn't need to spend anything for township assistance apart from the monthly salary we pay our township assistance investigator. Some people will go in and ask, and it'll be determined that they are in fact not eligible. And there might be other ways to help them if they do need help, but they don't qualify for township assistance. So we've spent a little bit over the last couple of years, but when we're talking about the capital improvement plan, that money is not in play. If you take, don't quote me on the exact figure, I know it's north of $400,000 the township has across all funds. It's the one fund here for the general fund. That's the only fund at issue, and it's got 115 as an estimated balance at the end of next year. And then this worksheet further reduces that based on potential capital improvements that we could make over the next couple of years. So again,
Votes on that, not to interrupt you, but who votes? Like.
Who decided
qualifies
who
for
decided
assistance?
to take our
That's
money?
fine. I mean.
who voted to do this grab, if you will?
Well, I'm saying paying for certain bills, what are we paying for? Who did it go to? Like, who made that decision? Okay,
Okay,
is this on record?
for township assistance, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, township assistance, the township, Adams County has a consolidated township assistance, and there are 2 women who
Correct.
work together. They do all the investigating, they do all the paperwork with respect to that. And then they will let the trustees know if someone's qualified. They'll prepare the vouchers and everything and say, for like Indiana Michigan Power, we need a check to Indiana Michigan Power for this amount, and the subject line needs to say this for this individual or family that needs it. So the township investigator has all of that. I have copies of what the investigator provides me to keep for our records. And then I've got and I also have the carbon copy of the checks that I send to them. The only checks that I've had to do for township assistance are a couple of electric bills to Indiana Michigan Power and a couple, not full tank fills, but for a little propane when they realize, hey, that tank's looking a little light, it's still February or something. So yeah, that's all there to what you were starting to say, Dave, there for a second. The decision for the 30% and the whole reason we're having this meeting for the capital improvement plan, that was done by the Indiana legislature and signed by the governor, to went through the full process and passed the law. So it is going to happen, but I think a lot of people were really bent out of shape at first, like what's the state doing coming taking 30%? But now I think there's a little bit more understanding of 30% of what. It's not everything, it's of particular unrestricted funds. And then based on your capital improvement plan, it would be further reduced from that. So if there is anything that any of you think that would be a worthwhile addition, we can add potential capital improvements going even more years in the future. I think we could even go as far as 2045. There are some townships that have huge facilities, and they might be thinking about a brand new building. We don't have those kind of things to consider, but the minimum we need to do is for the next 3 years, which is what you see on the plan expenditures. I did not print for you capital improvement plan revenues because we're not going to have any revenues with respect to that. There's the opportunity for a township to elect a certain percentage or something from its property taxes or what have you directed towards capital improvement things, but we don't have the capital items that we would need to direct that money to. Kind of a way of summarizing all of this. There's a lot of money, not necessarily from our township, but a lot of money around the state that's been sitting unused. The state's trying to make sure that it's being spent down, it's actually used, being dedicated towards road stuff. So we know that whatever that 30% is going to be, it's going to be given to the county, and then the county's supposed to use that amount of money towards.
I mean, here, here's our roads.
Even more precise than that, it's money that's been taxed from residents of Kirkland Township. So the money that 30%, as I understand, is supposed to go towards a road project within Kirkland Township. So as an example, just dumb luck, they put some chip and seal in front of the window here just today. Right?
Yeah,
They're moving around and doing stuff. And because of the nature of our roads, they could, if they wanted to pave one, they could apply it towards whatever small percentage that goes to on that. Because whatever amount they get from Kirkland Township is not going to be a significant amount relative to the cost of a project for a road. We just know that that's where the money will go to at the county's discretion, whichever road within Kirkland Township. So if there are questions, I'm happy to answer any of those questions. If anybody has suggestions about something else that they think would be a worthwhile thing to list as a potential line item for a capital investment, we could talk about that too. But absent any potential additions or any questions that I can answer, we just need to vote for the capital improvement plan. I've prepared a draft here as it is so that we can submit that to the state. So
you don't know of any, I mean, if that's blurring, that definitely needs done.
there's nothing glaringly that needs done, with the exception of a couple of stones that are leaning or starting to fall. So there's a couple stones where arguably get to them before the problem becomes worse, and a couple of stones that need repaired. Another idea I had, frankly, with this, some old stones, right? Is there a vendor out there who has the tools and the skill set to re-engrave? I mean, certainly you see sometimes stones being replaced, but is there the possibility that with cleaning and repair that you could re-engrave some of these stones to make them legible again? I'll tell you, I don't know for sure, but I thought to myself, with these line items that are just estimates put out there, I thought maybe we could use some of our capital money towards fixing up some of the stones like that. And again, we don't have to use any of this money for any of those things. We just have to prepare a plan of a potential estimate of what we do. If we decide over the next couple of years, we don't need to do that, I've erred on the side of caution, more. I don't anticipate spending the amount of money on this sheet towards our 3 cemeteries, but it allows us to show the state and encourage the state not to take that money yet, because we're using that as in case something happens. We don't know when that storm's gonna come, and all of a sudden, is there 2 or 3 stones that get destroyed by a tree falling in the next year that we don't know about. That's kind of why the figures are there.
I guess I don't have a lot of confidence in it's all cut and dried. That money's supposed to stay here in township. I don't have a lot of confidence in that happening. And even if it does, it's such a drop in the bucket. I don't think it's gonna really matter. But there's something we could do. I mean, I've seen some of these cemeteries where they'll take the headstones off and just pour a concrete footer.
Mm-hmm.
Ray, Kevin Foster's done a bunch of those down at Ray. It
Yes.
looks nice. It's good and solid. It'll last eons. Not sure whether or not that's something that we want to look into, but if we do have some of them starting to lean, they're not going to get better on their own. Maybe talk to somebody like Kevin. Like I said, I know he's done a lot of it. He's actually caretaker now at Ray.
Is he?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. He back when Miles was mowing and trustee out there, Miles got Kevin to come in and they do a section. And the next fall or the next spring, they will do another section. They've done an awful lot of them.
I get that, like maintaining around some are more fragile, but it's still a respectful place, and every headstone should have that same respect.
So with so what you're talking about with kind of new long footers,
Just pour
Just
on
right?
that
round up, bro.
it's
Basically, on either side, in between.
you can streamline a little bit. That's part of what's going to, and those are the footers. So when it comes to like resetting,
Right.
so that's built in.
Right.
This. There, you see, and this is something I can verify. A lot of I'll use Pleasant Dales, it's nearby right here. A lot of those footers that are longer like that are being put in by the family.
If they buy
If they buy it, they're doing it together, or as they're doing that. So I don't know. With respect to, we want to be careful on this stuff, because I think there are some stones that absolutely could use that, and want to make sure to try to contact people just to say, hey, we'd like to do some restoration of this stone. Make sure to the extent we can find someone connected to that individual, that they are aware of that too. I don't think they'd write if they say, hey, the township would like to make sure the relatives, their ancestor stone looks better. I don't think there'd be objection to any of that, but that's the idea with this capital improvement plan.
I guess I would be in favor of doing things like that. It's here just to spend money, but sounds like the money's leaving one way or another. We ought to at least, I think we ought to steer it towards
That
something.
that is precisely what this plan is, what this meeting's about, in terms of us just laying out. Again, we don't have to spend it, and if we make some adjustments and amounts or something because something we see in the future, we can. This is just our estimate that we're providing for the state as of today. So
Once that's money gone, they ain't never giving it back.
yeah, once and as you can see from the one, as they pull out, they don't have it calculated with the 75,000 from the one sheet. It's only showing 50,000 here because it pulls for 27, 28. That's just the way their figures go. But if we spent money on this next year and appropriate that cash balance at the end of December 31st, 2026 will go down. So at the end of next year, they're gonna figure out what the 30% is of the unrestricted funds. And they are gonna take it. They are gonna put it towards some road in Kirkland Township. You're right, we're never gonna see that back and do that. So this is a way for us to do that. And happily, we're talking about, in general, things are very good here. We don't have things that we have to go do that. Like I've seen another township spend $700,000 in the last week because they don't want the state getting it, to your point. So they are finding ways to spend it, but that goes to what the state's motivation for doing this. They're saying there's money that's supposed to be in use for people that's just sitting there, use it or lose it kind of thing. So we're not.
Everybody a brand new marble headstone, but you know, I guess still think that that might be taken and then in a couple of years, we're actually working. Stones start to fall, fucking stuff. You know, if we can be proactive and buy some of that money.
That's where I'm coming from with the motivation here, that we got a couple of stones that could use a little attention where we can be proactive instead of reactive source of potential. Any other questions with respect to this? If none, we just need to pass a resolution that we've gone through this and done that. Which I have here. I can just read it briefly. Be it resolved that a public hearing was held to adopt a capital improvement plan as required by Indiana Code 3669 for Kirkland Township and Adams County. The plan is duly adopted by the following vote of the members of the Township Board on the 29th day of September 2025. So there's a spot for aye or nay for your vote with respect to that. And then a spot for me to sign an attestation at the bottom. But if you're okay with this plan as we've talked about it here, I will provide all of this to the state so that I'll continue marching through that.
No matter what I'm trying to do.
Just if you're voting aye or yes, sign the left side. If you're voting no or nay, sign the right side. They've made the law for why we're having to do all this. This is a resolution saying that we've had this meeting, that we've talked about what we just talked about, and we approved the plan. So what I provided for you here, I will be uploading in Gateway to the state either later tonight or tomorrow, but I'll provide it all to the state then, because that's what they need. They need that from us. And you'll laugh, talk about they're gonna take it one way or the other. The penalty, if you don't turn this stuff into the state, is they won't give you any property taxes, period. So that's how they're serious about it. It was my understanding. So
Make sure we take care of what we're supposed to take care of first.
You got that cemetery really nice over there now. They want to come.
well, and I talked to them last week. I think on the whole, Zion has looked good the times that I've been by. I'll say this in particular. Because remember last year we had a few volunteers and I volunteered to do it a few times just so I could have a sense of how much work this is having. Because I think the prior caretaker was getting the amount of time you put in there and the number of times when they even sprayed for weeds and stuff. The dandelions haven't been an issue, so the grass is looking much better. So it's on the way up. So thank you for that. Go ahead.
Brady Ripple, he was over here, 100 fuel guy.
Yes, between 400 and 500 and 100
Yeah.
Yep, precisely.
Okay.
Yep, Brady and his teenage son. I know we're in a Zoom meeting. I won't broadcast his name for the world here, but current teenage son, and he's got a son that's in the 4th grade in my son's class and stuff. So yeah, the Ripples have, I think they've enjoyed doing it and certainly appreciate them doing it. So thank you for that. The last thing on the agenda is just talking about a week from today, next Monday, we'll have the first hearing for the budget. They've prepared all that after our budget workshop, and then you have to wait 10 days. So we'll meet on the 6th, then we'll meet on the 16th. for our budget approval meeting. And that covers everything else we need to do for the year in preparation for next year. So unless anybody else has anything else they have a question about, something, those are the agenda items. We can move to adjourn and see everybody again in a week.
You know,
I'll move, adjourn.
All right.
yeah, that's the one for it. Right.
So you're-
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody.